All right, welcome to lesson 3.2 for Math 10C Prep. We're going to do a little bit of review before we get started in the new lesson. So, first we're going to review is what is slope. Slope is the steepness of something. So, for instance, something that is very steep, like a steep hill, it goes down really, really fast, that would have a large slope because it's very steep. Something that is not very slanted, so like a little ramp maybe to get up into a building, like a handicap ramp for a wheelchair, that's not very steep, so that would have a low slope, like a small number. The way that we calculate slope is that we had a formula that slope equaled rise divided by run. We're going to try calculating a few slope questions. So if we looked at these lines right here, we wanted to calculate the slope. We know slope equals rise over run. To figure out what the rise and run are, you find 2 points on your graph. So there's a point and there's a point. You start from the left dot and you rise up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you run 1, 2. The slope for this would equal 4 divided by 2. I rised 4, I ran 2. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. That would be the slope. If we look at the second one, we want to calculate the slope, find 2 points like that. Always work left to right. So we're going to rise 1, 2, 3, and then run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means my slope equals a rise of 3 divided by a run of 5. If you put that in your calculator, it's a decimal, so we leave it as 3 divided by 5. If we look at number 3, we have 2 points. Always work left to right. So I have a rise of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But because I went down, it's negative 5. And then a run of 1, 2, 3, 4. My slope equals negative 5 over 4. It's negative because the line is going downwards as I go left to right. Awesome. That's finding slope. The other thing we learned yesterday is how to find the Y-intercept of a graph. The Y-intercept is where your line crosses the Y-axis. The Y-axis is this line right here. So you need to try to find where your graph crosses these Y-axes. So for instance, this first line crosses right there at negative 3. So my Y-intercept is at negative 3. This one is right in the middle, therefore my Y-intercept is at 0. And this one crosses my Y-axis there at 1. Those are called your Y-intercept values. Awesome. That was all day of yesterday. So that's our slope and our Y-intercept combined. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to take these graphs. So see these straight lines? We've been finding the slope and the Y-intercept of lines, like these graphs pictorially. Well, these graphs can also be represented as equations. So we could take those lines and represent them as equations instead of as pictures. When we represent them as equations, we always want them to be in this form. That's y equals mx plus b. So you want the letter y by itself and everything else on the other side. And that's how we write those lines as equations. When you're in this form, each letter means something different. The letter y represents the y coordinate, or the y values. Typically, we just leave it as the letter y. The x value represents the x coordinate. So depending where you are on the line, those values can mean different things because the x and the y coordinates are always changing. We call them variables. The m value, though, and the b value aren't changing. These things will always be the same. The m variable represents your slope of the line, while your b variable represents the y-intercept of a line. Therefore, we call this thing slope-intercept form, because you can easily look at it and determine what the slope of your line is and what the y-intercept of your line is without even having a picture. That's basically all we're going to do today. And then tomorrow we're going to work a little bit more with slope-intercept form. So we got a ton of questions here. We'll do the first 9 together. We are going to try to determine the slope and the y-intercept for all of these equations, which represent lines if we were to have pictures for them. So if we look at the first one, this is in the form y equals mx plus b. And you can easily see that m equals 3 and b equals 4. This means the slope equals 3 and the y-intercept equals 4. Now, for the record, we do use the letters, the letter M to represent slope. So if you ever see M equals, that means slope. The letter B, sometimes we use as y-intercept, sometimes we don't. So typically we'll actually write out the y-intercept. If you look at question 2, you can tell that this thing is in slope-intercept form. So this means my slope equals 4. My y-intercept equals 7. For 3, my slope equals 0.5 right there. And my y-intercept equals 1. They can sometimes mix up the questions, make them a little bit harder. As long as you notice that the b value is always by itself, so it's not next to the x, and the slope is always being multiplied by the x, so it's the number right attached to the x. Awesome. We'll try 3 more. So if we look at number 4, the slope is quite clearly 3 over 5. And the y-intercept this time isn't 5. The y-intercept is negative 5. Right? So just be aware of that symbol. When that symbol changes to negative, now we have negative y-intercepts. This question has a slope of negative 5 over 6 and a y-intercept of negative 1. Number 6 is a little tricky. It's tricky because there's nothing here. Right? The number that's being multiplied by x is your slope. If there's nothing there in front of the x, there is an invisible number, and it's a 1. Remember, that represents 1x. We just don't write the 1. So for a question like that, my slope is equal to 1. The y-intercept is equal to 2. So it can get a little tricky. This one up here. The number attached to the x is my slope. So my slope is 2 over 3. But there is no value here for my b value. If there's no value there, it's like saying plus 0, not plus 1, right? But we don't need to write plus 0, so that's why they don't write it. In this case, the y-intercept would be at 0, right in the center of the graph. It doesn't mean that there's not a y-intercept. It just means that the y-intercept is at 0. 8. 8 is a tricky one because there is no x there. So that means the slope is not 1. That's not what this means. Because there's no x term, that means there's 0 x's. That means the slope is 0. It doesn't exist. The y-intercept in this case is my plus 9. Essentially, this equation is the same thing as saying this. 0 x's plus 9. We just would never write that you have 0 x's. You just wouldn't put them, right? And my last one is probably the trickiest because it's not in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form has to look like this. So slope-intercept form, you'll notice the y is by itself and there's nothing else on that side. On this question, the y is not by itself. It's y plus 10. So you need to move that number to the other side. The way we move things is by subtracting 10 from both sides. Now that I've rearranged my question properly, I can determine what my slope and my y-intercept are. My slope for this question is an invisible 1 right here. My y-intercept for this question is negative 10, not positive 10. Cool. There are 9 questions for you to try right here. So you can pause the video, go ahead, try them all, and then check your answers and see if you got it right or wrong. Awesome. Hopefully you paused the video and you've come back to check your answers. All of the answers are there. On that last question, just make sure you rearrange it, right? The y has to be by itself. When you're all done checking your work, if you have any questions or mistakes on them, please pop into the chat and chat with me so we can figure it out, and then complete your practice homework, which is on the Google Classroom. Tomorrow we will continue on with this slope-intercept form. It'll just get a little bit harder. So make sure that you kind of perfect this. Today should be decently easy. Awesome. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow.